Thank you, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Žiga Kljun, and I'm coming from Kyndryl, one of the global service providers. I'm based out of Austria, and my responsibilities in Kyndryl is to scale the AI across the globe, across the Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Latin America through the AI adoption journeys. And in today's session, what I would like to do is to share with you some of the insights, some of the lesson learns from these other AI engagements. I would like to share with you what is the Kyndryl agentic AI framework, how we are approaching to help our customers with their adoption challenges. And at the end, as Sarah also mentioned, I would like to show you a real example on a live demo which we built for one of our banks in the UK. So I wanted to start this presentation with the key observation that I noticed after deploying dozens of AIs all across the globe. And this is that most of the companies today, they're already working with the AI. They're already deploying pilots, they're deploying the POCs, they're realizing some value. But where majority is still struggling is how to move from the POC environment into a production environment. And what I learned, or what we learn, is that actually it's not about having smarter models, it's not about having better technology, but where majority is struggling is with the framework. How to establish the processes so that my AI is going to be safe. How to embed the AI across the different departures in the organization. And also, as Philip was also mentioning, how to set the boundaries. Because with the agentic AI, the AI is becoming autonomous. It is able to execute the task on its own. So it's important to have some kind of boundaries and guardrails that are preventing AI to just go wild. But me being the data person, I always want to validate my observations with the other data as well, right? Just to make sure that I'm not biased and I'm not hallucinating as the agents are. So for that reason, in Kyndryl, we recently conducted the AI readiness survey, where we interviewed hundreds of C-level executives from our customers. Where on the AI journey are they? And the findings for me were actually quite shocking. Usually on this slide, I start on the left, but today I'm going to start on a positive note. So if you look at the top right corner, we can see that almost 70% of the organizations, they're already using the AI and they're realizing the value. So they're either doing the POCs or pilots, they're having something in production, but the AI is enhancing their product, their efficiency, and their productivity, which is good. But what is not as good is what you can see on the top left side of the screen, which is basically stating that only 1 out of the 3 companies is able to embed the AI throughout the whole value flow in the company. What I mean by that? I'm not talking here about the siloed POCs in IT, siloed POC in operations, but talking about full integration from the finance to HR to IT to regulatory. And the lack of this integration is actually indicating one of the biggest struggles with the enterprise AI, and this is the messy data. Because in order to incorporate this throughout the whole value flow, you need to have the proper data foundations in place. Talking about the data governance, talking about the proper lineage, about the frameworks and stuff that we're going to discuss later as well. But what's even more worrying for me is what you can see on the bottom. So less than 30% of the business leaders are confident that their employees are able to use the AI. What I mean by that? We kept hearing from our customers, we invested millions in AI, but our people are not willing to use it. Or we have the technology, but our people just don't know how to use it, which is kind of indicating that technology is no longer the bottleneck, but the people, processes, and enablements are. But then the most worrying of it all is basically if you look at the middle, in the intersect. So only 14%, only 1 out of 7 companies is able to address all of these 3 key pillars. So they have the AI in place that is giving them the value. They're able to embed it throughout the whole value flow, and their people are actually using it. Only 14%. And the issue with that is that these pace setters, these are not only marginally ahead, but they are accelerating forward. And while the rest is still being stuck in the POC and pilot phases, they're already realizing the gains of the AI, and they're reinvesting them into further investment. But okay, this is about the market trends. But what are we in Kyndryl, together with Samlink, doing in order to help our customers on this journey? So what we did is we designed what we call Kyndryl agentic AI framework. And what the framework is basically a combination of methodologies and best practices that we build based out of our previous AI engagements, in addition to the accelerators, which are kind of the key components, key tools that customers can use in order to adopt the AI faster in a more secure manner. And now, before I jump into the demo, I would like to just briefly walk you through the key components that you can see on the screen. So if I start at the top, we have the agent catalog and basically industry architectures. So if you think about it, right, when you're building, let's say, your use cases, your products, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You would like to reuse what's available already. And for that reason, we built 100 enterprise-ready agents that has been already trained on variety of data on banks, on manufacturing, on variety of different industries. So you as a customer can go, see your use case, see which agent is basically addressing the use case, and you can just pull it from the repository. And what you're achieving with that is not only the faster deployment time, but also reduce risk, because all of these agents, they have been already tested in an enterprise environment. But of course, we also realize that not all of the use cases can be covered with the pre-made agents, right? In some cases, you just need to have something custom, something developed specifically for you. And for that reason, on the left, we have the agentic builder. So this is the tool that we built where our customer can use either pro-code, low-code, or low-code approach. So basically, anyone in the organization can go ahead and build their own agents. But the purpose of this one is not only to build the agents, but also to registering them. Because in Kyndryl, we firmly believe that each agent, before being added to the agent catalog, needs to be properly monitored, governed, and documented. And with that approach, what we're doing, we're basically preventing having the shadow AI doing something somewhere in the organization that nobody has a clue what it's all about. And also, if you think about it, right, today we're all using, let's say, the ChatGPTs, Groks, Claudes, Mistral, and others. And if the ChatGPT would make the mistake, okay, it's annoying, but it's not the end of the world, right? But if the enterprise AI make the mistake, it can be a lawsuit, it can be the crash customer relationship, or something even worse. So this is why this shadow AI prevention is super critical. But then if you look at the left side of the screen, we have agentic ingestion. What is that? So this is basically the component that is addressing the most problematic part of the enterprise AI, and this is the messy data. So if you look at your organization today, in most of them, you would have, let's say, 20 years old databases, you would have legacy systems, you would have PowerPoint, SharePoint, Excel, tons of different data sources. And while some of these data sources may be structured, the majority is really not. So it's really hard for the AI to do some magic with it, right? So what we're doing here, we're basically giving agents the access to your environment so that they can learn the dependencies, that they can learn the connections, and how the data is operating. And basically, they're extracting the data and putting it in a way so that framework can actually work with it. So in essence, in one sentence, we are teaching the AI your institutional knowledge regardless of where it is stored, whether this would be cloud, hybrid, or even the mainframe. But now we come to the most impressive part, or the core of the agentic AI framework, which is in the middle, which is kind of the AI orchestrator. What this component do, it's basically able to understand what is the requirement, what is the user intent. It is able to identify what are all of the steps needed in order to reach a certain goal, and identify agents from the catalog that will be able to execute this flow. An example of this I'm going to share later in the demo as well. But okay, these are just the components. But when we are designing the framework, when we are adopting the AI, there are also some key principles that we have to follow. And starting on the left, we have the unified user interface. This one seems pretty straightforward, but it's actually one of the most important components in the AI adoption journey. I can share with you the example from an Austrian bank, from an Austrian customer with whom I'm working right now. So initially, they jumped on this AI train pretty fast. They started to implement Microsoft Copilots, they have SAP Joule, ServiceNow agents, they also built some custom agents on Google. And even though the productivity on the short term went up, user satisfaction actually dropped. And basically, a lot of their customers quit it because they didn't like their job anymore. And what was the issue? Out of the sudden, they had to start learning all of these different toolings, all of these different agents. When do I have to go to Copilot? When do I need to go to SAP Joule? When do I have to go to the other one? And in addition to that, they also had to now navigate all of these different agents, combine the output, send them to the next one, which was quite a confusing task. So what we proposed to build the master agent that was serving as a single point of interaction. So instead of end user communicating with 15 different user interfaces, they were able to go to this master agent, and this master agent did all of the communication for them. So basically agenting or connecting with the rest. Because nobody wants to learn 15 or even hundreds of new interfaces just to use 15 different features. And to go even further, this kinda needs to be also hyper-personalized, because a person in finance would need to have a different view compared to a person in IT. Then if I jump straight into the responsible AI, this we all know it's super important component, especially in Europe with all of the regulations such as EU Ag, GDPRs and others. And what we're doing here, we're basically enforcing policy as code approach. What is this? So as I was mentioning before, now the agents are becoming autonomous and they can basically think of anything possible. So before they're executing a certain task, they have to go and check in the central repository to the list of rules whether they are permitted to do it or not, and act only accordingly. And what we are achieving with that is not only establish boundaries, but it's also providing us the auditability, explainability, and also the full transparency. And then if I conclude with the principles, I would also like to touch the one on the employees. I was mentioning before, a lot of people right now, they're kind of scared that AI is going to take over, or some of them are just not trusting the AI, right? So this is definitely going to be the important component, but what we firmly believe is that people are here to stay, right? But the nature of their work is going to change. So instead of focusing on a time-consuming task or on the repetitive task, they will be focusing on training the models and working on a more unique, high-value use cases. In addition to, of course, working kind of as a human in the loop. It's still, at the end, AI will make the decision, but human will be the one confirming whether we should proceed or not, because there are also the questions of ownership. An example of that I'm also going to share you as a part of the demo. But yeah, in essence, this framework, this is kind of the future workforce model that we envision, kind of AI and people working together at the same time. Okay, but now to the more interesting part, because I know in theory everybody can promise you everything, but to show what we are doing, we would like to show you the demo, that demo based on the pilot that we did for one of our UK-based customers. So the issue that this customer was having was with the corporate customer onboarding. So if you think about, right, as a retail customer, it's relatively easy to open the account, right? Usually it happened within one day. But for our corporate customers, this bank was spending from 14 to 30 days, which was quite a lot of time, right? Because they had to go through all of the validation, through all of the checks, calculating the risk, doing the analysis, which took them more time than they wanted. And in Kyndryl, after, let's say, the initial conversation and after the workshop that we did together, we kind of boldly proposed, okay, let's use agentic AI framework and reduce this time from 30 days to 30 minutes, which sounds quite an extreme. And they were like, okay, yes, why not? And what came as a result of this, I will show you in the demo. Let me just prepare But just to explain what you will see in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to promote myself to chief compliance officer, and my responsibility will be to onboard a certain corporate customer to our bank. But before onboarding, before basically approving them, I will have to go through various of different validations and risk calculations. And for that, I would like to use agentic AI framework. So what I will do, I will open the framework. I will provide the information, what I would like to achieve. And then the framework will be able to identify what are the needed steps, which agents from my catalog are needed for certain steps, and then execute the flow and build the application and report for me. So this was my landing page, right? So here, basically, I can type whatever I want, right? But in this particular case, I would like to tell to the framework, show me the wholesale onboarding with the company house pre-fill and full screening. So what is the company's house? This is basically the UK-based government portal with the registry of the companies based out of the UK, right? If I just use the pre-prompt, okay. So now, as you can see, immediately after I provided this prompt, the framework is now able to identify all of the agents from the catalog that will be needed for this task. And then in addition to that, it will be also able to rank them, make the connection, and execute the flow. But let me show you basically one by one what it was able to identify. As you can see right now, the connections are already being done and flow is being executed. So in our first step, the first agent, it will be able to capture the onboarding intent, what we would actually like to achieve. The purpose of this one is to understand the natural language and translate it into the business requirements. Then after that, okay, let me go back and explain before I go to the final solution. Then the next step, it basically realized, okay, first I have to generate the customer record number in our system. But after that, the data collection process started, right? I hope that the size is visible on the screen. Otherwise, I can make it larger. If this is not large enough, please let me know, because it's important for you to see what are the, let's say, inputs and outputs from each agent. So at first, I need to go and collect the multi-jurisdiction data. For that case, what it's doing, as it was provided in the prompt, we'll be checking UK company houses, and based on, let's say, the previous preferences, we're also checking the US SEC and EU business registers. So this is one type of data collections. And then the other type of data collections is also analyzing the documents that we already have about this customer. So we are running the OCR and extracting this data to our framework. And then after the data will be collected, we are doing the checks we are basically doing the extraction from Dun & Bradstreet database, right, that we're having the access to. So we are basically validating whether this identification number is the same as in the corporate housing system. Then what we're also doing is basically UBO and PCS mapping. So we are identifying the ultimate beneficiaries owners and director shareholders, basically anyone with more than 25% of the stake in the company. So we are identifying who are those people, and then we're doing the sanction, PIP, and adverse media. So we're checking online to the media, to the internet, to all of the articles, if something sketchy is going on with these people, if there has been any lawsuit, basically who are these people, and also what is their political exposure. What we're also doing for those people, we are running the financial and accounting section. So basically, we are loading the fields accounts, cash flow statements, basically to support later risk assessment. Here, as you can see, as a result of people identification, doing the sanction and the adverse media, and also doing the financial analysis, we have now the agents that will be able to do the risk assessment and basically calculate what is the risk for onboarding certain customer. What we're also doing in parallel, based on the data provided from the registers and based from the Dun & Bradstreet data, we are doing anomaly checks and consistency check, whether something is not wrong or if everything is basically aligned. And one more thing that we also have to do is basically digital identity verification. This component is actually quite interesting because it's not the agent who is executing it, but it's agent who is calling the tool that customer already built. So this is basically the video verification that the user will be doing on the camera, right? So basically, before this one would get confirmed, the actual human would have to do the video verification and send confirmation to the agent. But for the sake of the demo, we made this automatically approved. But what I'm trying to say is that there is still human in the loop, even though the majority is handled from the AI. Okay, and then after we complete with all these three, so we have the digital identity verification, we checked for anomalies and inconsistencies. We also calculated the risk. We can finally consolidate everything together, and now we have to create, okay, let me make this bigger, Salesforce ticket in Salesforce. So one important information here is also, even though majority of the agents is running in our own system, we are still connecting to external tools such as Salesforce, right? Because the integration and ecosystem at the end of the day will be very important. And something else that I also forgot to mention earlier, our whole approach is kinda modularly based, right? So for example, if the agent builder, you would like to use the one from the Microsoft, this can be done. If for the orchestrator, you would like to go with Google, this is an option as well, right? So the idea is to have really plug and play modular approach. But okay, let me go back to the demo. So we have so now we open the Salesforce ticket. We are also now using the agents to provide us with regulatory audit trail so that we will see each steps that agent executed, who did which task, what was the reasoning, what was the explainability, what was the background behind this, right? Because this one is going to be very important for the regulatory purposes. Then we have the agents that is doing the customer due diligence summarization. So basically, out of all of the information that now we calculated and created from risk to verification data and so on, now we have to summarize the data that will be useful for our report. What we're doing in parallel is also chatbot interface agent. So this agent is able to come up with the interface and basically create a report based on the web application. And after these two are completed, you also have what we are calling Unified Corporate Banking KYC dashboard. So based out of the summarization and based out of the interface, we are creating the dashboard that will be visible on the screen. And in parallel, we'll also providing the orchestration agent. And again, this is being consolidated. And the next step before finalizing, let's say, this flow is also decision and next best action agent. What these agents do, based off all of the information that we have right now, it is able to identify what are the recommended actions for me as a chief compliance officer before I basically go ahead and onboard this customer. And that's it, right? And this is the last one. So now let me show you how the final outcome actually looks like. And if you think about this is the report, and I'm going to present it a little bit more into the details. But if you think about initially how we started was with open text. Basically, we were able to put whatever we would like. In that case, we picked automated onboarding, but it could be also something else, maybe customer churn, maybe some risk scoring and stuff like that. And the idea is of whatever I would say to the framework, it should be able to identify the flow, the agents, and execute the stuff on its own without pre-programmatically define the flow and the processes. Of course, you cannot go there overnight. You still need to build, let's say, the huge repository of the agents. But this is kind of the end goal, right? Having the open text to basically execute whatever you want. But okay, I know that I'm jumping. Let me go back to the report that it generated. So this is the customer that we are onboarding, Global Tech Innovation, and I can see basically the results based on all of the provided information and extracted information from the data sources. Calculated risk is 2.3, so very low. We can see that 94% was basically automated. You remember 6% was basically for this video verification where we still need to call the human agents. We can see that the process was completed and that the activation of the account is planned in the next 24 hours. What I can also see on the report is what are all of the stages that were completed. So first, we understood the user intent, basically my prompt, what I put into the framework. We were able to gather data from variety of data sources, from the OCRs to the corporate housing to the SEC. We were able to do enhanced verification and processing through our internal CRMs, through the Dun & Bradstreet databases. We are also able to integrate with Salesforce and open the ticket in there. We are able to basically establish audit trail so that we can see the whole flow and what's happening. And at the end, we also did the customer due diligence and also next best actions that you will see in the bottom. And also, what were the verification results? This is what we were able to check. So for company house, it was verified, it's correct. Dun and Bradstreet integration, it matched, the number was correct. Sanction screening, it was clear, nothing sketchy there. Political exposed person, clear, no issues over there. And also UBO and PCS mapping, it was completed, right? So that we were able to identify those people. So now what I can also see is basically banking products that has been also pre-approved based on the other sections. So internal payment, pre-approved, business credit facilities pre-approved, trade finance services pre-approved. And now we can also see who will be the key contact or who could be the key contact for this customer, and also immediate next actions. These are kind of the recommendations that the agent was able to come up with. So basically first in the next day, do the account verification, then send the welcome package and basically do the team introduction. And what is the next step for me as an officer? I can either download the report or I can go ahead and activate the account. So let me go check, activate business account now. This is the DEMA environment, so I'm not actually doing this, but it's going through all of the steps and done. Basically, the account is activating. I have all of my details here, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so this is what I have for today. I plan to have some time for the questions at the end. We ran out of time, but I would be super happy to connect with you in the networking session afterwards. Thank you for the attention.